Anxiety is like a silent thief that sneaks into your mind and steals your calm without you realizing it. It doesn't make noise, it doesn't break windows, but suddenly you wake up with a tight chest, with thoughts that won't stop, and with a feeling that something bad is about to happen, even though nothing is happening. That is the reality of millions of people, and perhaps yours too, fighting every day with an invisible storm that seems stronger than you. The Stoics understood this battle long before modern psychology gave it a name. Marcus Aurelius ruled an empire beset by wars and plagues, and yet he wrote that man finds peace when he accepts what does not depend on him. Epictetus, born a slave, knew that although they could chain his body, his mind would always be free. Seneca, surrounded by intrigues and death threats, chose to live with calm and clarity instead of surrendering to fear. They did not speak from theory, but from the daily battle against uncertainty, pain, and anxiety. Today, science confirms what those philosophers practiced in their own flesh. Neuroscience has shown that the simple act of focusing the mind on the present reduces the brain's alarm response. Cognitive psychology teaches that questioning negative thoughts weakens their power. And well-being research reveals that living with purpose, gratitude, and self-control is one of the most effective ways to combat anxiety. In this journey, you will not find empty phrases or superficial solutions. What you are going to discover are 9 Stoic practices, direct and forceful, that you can apply in your daily life. Simple but powerful tools that will turn anxiety into a training field instead of a sentence. Stay until the end, because here we are not going to deny anxiety or disguise it. We are going to confront it with discipline, with science, and with philosophy, to demonstrate that calm is an internal decision that no one can take away from you. 1. Let go of what doesn't depend on you. Anxiety is like carrying a backpack full of stones that you never chose. You walk with it every day, bending your back, believing that each weight corresponds to you, when in reality, many of those stones are not yours. Worries about what others think, fear of how they will react, anguish about the weather, about the future, about what is out of your control. The absurd thing is that most of the time we invest more energy in what does not depend on us than in what we can change. And so the backpack becomes unbearable. The Stoics were clear: there is an invisible line that separates what you control from what you do not. Epictetus summed it up without adornment, saying that there are things that depend on you, like your judgments, your decisions, and your actions, and things that do not, like the passage of time, the opinion of others, or luck. When you cross that line and obsess over the external, you open the door to anxiety. And it's not about resignation, but focus. Whoever distinguishes between what is their own and what is not regains power, because they stop wearing themselves out in impossible battles. Science today confirms it. Psychology has shown that people who practice so-called radical acceptance show fewer symptoms of anxiety. This means assuming that certain events are not under your control, freeing your brain from the cycle of constant worry. Mindfulness studies reinforce the same. Accepting without resistance what cannot be changed reduces activity in the areas of the brain related to stress. How to apply this in everyday life? Start with something simple. Identify your worry and ask yourself with brutal honesty whether it depends on you or not. If you are anxious because someone does not respond to a message, remember that you do not control their reaction, but you do control what you will do in the meantime. If you are worried about a result at work, focus on the effort you put in, not on the final approval. If you fear the future, remember that you only control what you do today. Each time you recognize the difference, you drop a stone from your backpack. A practical exercise is to write 2 columns on a sheet. In the first, write down everything that worries you today. In the second, mark what really depends on you. You will notice that a large part of your anxious thoughts accumulate in the uncontrollable. That simple act of separating what is yours from what is not gives you clarity and reduces the feeling of being trapped in a whirlwind. Letting go of what does not depend on you is not being passive or indifferent. It is being smart. It is reserving your energy for what you can build and stop giving it to ghosts that will never obey your will. Anxiety feeds on the attempt to control the uncontrollable. On the other hand, serenity begins when you accept that you cannot decide how the wind blows, but you can adjust the sails of your ship. 2. Value the brief and essential life. Anxiety often arises from the illusion that we have all the time in the world. We walk as if each day were eternal, accumulating small worries, endless tasks, and fears that we postpone facing. But life is like an hourglass that never stops. The problem is that we believe that the sand does not run out, and in the meantime, we waste it on what does not matter. Stoicism starkly reminds you that time is limited, and that anxiety feeds on forgetting this truth. Seneca wrote it firmly, "It's not that we have little time, but that we waste it." And the truth is that much of the anxiety arises from there, from spending energy on useless distractions, on valueless obsessions, on meaningless comparisons. When you remember that your life is brief, you put a natural filter on what deserves attention and what does not. The brevity of existence should not be a burden, but a call to focus on the essential. Science backs this view. Studies in positive psychology show that those who cultivate awareness of mortality develop greater gratitude and less anxiety. Recognizing the finiteness of life changes the way your mind processes worries because it relativizes what seemed immense. A problem at work or a negative comment loses weight when you compare it with the fact that your days are limited. Research on gratitude shows that writing each day what you value significantly reduces symptoms of anxiety and depression because you train your mind to focus on what you do have instead of what you fear to lose. How to apply this in a practical way? Start by remembering each morning that you don't know how many days you have and ask yourself what is worth spending your hours on. Make a list of the essentials, the people you love, the projects that give meaning to your life, the habits that strengthen your mind and body. Use that list as a compass to decide what deserves your energy. When anxiety tries to drag you with chaotic thoughts, return to that compass and ask yourself if what worries you still has value on the scale of such a short life. Another useful tip is to practice conscious gratitude. Before going to sleep, write down 3 things that made your day valuable. It doesn't matter if they are big achievements or minimal details, like a sincere conversation or a moment of calm. This habit trains your brain to recognize the essential and reduces the natural tendency to focus on the negative. Valuing the brief life does not mean living in fear of the end, but with urgency for what is important. It is understanding that anxiety loses strength when you stop tormenting yourself over the accessory and embrace what gives meaning. The brevity of life is the most powerful reminder that you don't have to control everything. Just take advantage of what is in front of you with attention, gratitude, and courage. 3. Stay in the present. Anxiety is like being trapped in a room full of broken mirrors. Each reflection shows a "what if," "I should have done this," "surely everything will go wrong." Your mind races from mirror to mirror, but none reflect reality. The present is in front of you, intact, but amidst the mental noise, you don't see it. And while your attention is lost between past and future, the now becomes fertile ground for anxiety. The Stoics understood that life only happens in one instant, this one. Marcus Aurelius wrote it clearly, saying that every man's existence is reduced to a single present moment. However, the common mistake is to live in a double prison, the weight of what has already happened and the shadow of what has not yet arrived. This combination poisons the mind. When you manage to stay in the present, anxiety loses much of its strength because most of its roots are in invented scenarios. Science confirms this. Studies on mindfulness have shown that training full attention reduces activity in brain regions associated with rumination and worry. People who practice simple mindful breathing exercises report less anxiety because they break the cycle of automatic thoughts that trigger stress. Psychological research also reveals that when your focus is on the immediate experience, your brain processes reality in a clearer and less threatening way. How to start living this principle? First, use breathing as an anchor. Every time you notice your mind racing towards the future or getting tangled up in memories, breathe deeply, count to 4 as you inhale, hold for 2 seconds, and exhale, counting again to 4. This small exercise brings your attention back to the now. It's not magic, it's biology. By regulating your breathing, you activate the parasympathetic nervous system, which calms the anxiety response. Another useful practice is body scanning. Spend a few minutes each day observing how your body feels, from head to toe, without judgment. This habit trains your mind to stay in the present through physical sensations, steering it away from repetitive thoughts. It's also key to set boundaries to distractions. If you check notifications every minute, your attention never trains in the present, but lives in constant alert. Set specific times to check messages and dedicate screen-free spaces to focus on what you're doing. Staying in the present doesn't mean forgetting the past or ignoring the future. It means understanding that only this moment is real. When you learn to inhabit it with attention, anxiety is reduced because you stop feeding the ghosts that live outside of the now. The present is always an available refuge, but it's up to you to enter it with discipline and daily practice. 4. Embrace voluntary discomfort. Anxiety is like a guardian living at the entrance of your mind, always ready to remind you of everything that could go wrong. Every time you try to move forward, it rises and warns you, "This will hurt, better not try it." The problem is that the more you listen to it, the stronger it becomes. What you don't understand at that moment is that discomfort is not an enemy, but a teacher who, if you face it voluntarily, weakens the power of that guardian. The Stoics practiced this consciously. Seneca recommended sleeping on the floor some days, wearing simple clothes or eating frugally, not because he couldn't afford luxuries, but to train his mind not to fear loss. Marcus Aurelius spoke of accepting life's discomforts as part of nature without unnecessary resistance. For them, chosen discomfort was a shield against anxiety because it accustomed the spirit to the unexpected. Modern science confirms the value of this approach. Studies in behavioral psychology show that controlled exposure to uncomfortable situations reduces anxiety levels over time. It's the principle behind exposure therapy. The more you voluntarily confront what you fear, the less power it has over you. Research also shows that resilience develops when you choose to step out of your comfort zone in small doses, strengthening your ability to face real challenges. How to apply this practically? Start with small acts of voluntary discomfort. You can shower with cold water for 30 seconds, walk a stretch without a coat on a cool day, or turn off your phone for several hours. These simple exercises are not meant to martyr you, but to train your mind to understand that discomfort is temporary and not fatal. Each time you consciously expose yourself to something uncomfortable, you show your anxiety that it doesn't have the last word. Another effective way is to face tasks that you postpone out of fear or insecurity. Call that person you avoid talking to, start the project that intimidates you, or speak your mind in a meeting. The key is to do it with intention, knowing that discomfort is part of the growth process. The result is a stronger, less anxious mind, better trained to tolerate uncertainty. You can also apply discomfort in everyday habits. Reduce sugar intake, limit the use of social media, or get up earlier than usual. These are not punishments. They are reminders that you have control over yourself. And that feeling of control is one of the most powerful antidotes against anxiety. Embracing voluntary discomfort does not mean seeking suffering. It means choosing small battles that prepare you for the big ones. Anxiety feeds on the idea that you won't be able to withstand the unexpected. When you practice discomfort with discipline, you show that you are stronger than you thought, and that life doesn't need to scare you to move forward. 5. Anchor your mind in reason. Anxiety is like a runaway horse. It runs aimlessly, dragging everything in its path and leaving you breathless. If you let it loose without control, it drags you towards the worst imagined scenarios. But if you know how to hold the reins, the same horse that was once a threat becomes a force you can guide. That rein is reason, the anchor that Stoicism proposes to prevent you from being dominated by uncontrolled impulses and thoughts. Epictetus said that it is not the things themselves that disturb us, but our opinion of them. That phrase is a direct blow to anxiety, because it reminds us that what torments us is not always reality, but the interpretation we construct in our mind. Marcus Aurelius, in the midst of wars and betrayals, wrote in his Meditations that he should examine every impression that came to his head and decide whether it was rational or just an emotion disguised as truth. This habit kept him firm even in situations that would have broken anyone else. Today, science supports this ancient practice. Cognitive behavioral therapy, considered one of the most effective treatments against anxiety, is based on the same principle: identifying irrational thoughts, questioning them, and replacing them with more realistic interpretations. Studies show that when you learn to evaluate your thoughts instead of reacting automatically, the intensity of anxiety decreases and your sense of control increases. How to bring this into your daily life? Start by stopping when an anxious thought appears. Ask yourself, what real evidence do I have that this will happen? Am I exaggerating the risk? What would a friend tell me if I told them about this fear? This small examination breaks the chain of automatic interpretations and activates your ability to reason. Another effective technique is to write your worries on paper. When a thought remains in the mind, it tends to multiply and take on larger forms than it really is. By writing it down, you see it more clearly and can analyze it from a distance. Ask yourself if what you wrote is a fact or just an assumption. This simple exercise weakens anxiety because it transforms the vague into concrete. You can also train your mind to respond with rational affirmations. If you think, "I'm going to fail," change it to, "I can't know the outcome, but I can do my best." It's not about empty positive phrases, but about reminders based on reality. Little by little, your brain learns not to fall into the same pattern of catastrophe. Anchoring the mind in reason does not eliminate emotions, but it puts them in their place. Anxiety screams that everything is lost. Reason responds that nothing has happened yet. Anxiety imagines the worst scenario. Reason remembers that there are also thousands of better possibilities. Every time you choose to reason instead of reacting, you take ground from the mental storm and regain control of your life. 6. Accept the inevitable with calmness. Anxiety feels like standing in front of a closed door that you're pounding on with all your might, hoping it will open. Minutes pass, you sweat, you become desperate, but the door doesn't give in because it was never meant to open. This futile effort wears down your mind, and without realizing it, you turn the inevitable into additional suffering. Stoicism teaches that much of anxiety arises from this resistance, wanting to change what cannot be changed. Marcus Aurelius repeated that everything that happens is part of the order of nature. Epictetus insisted that we should not wish for things to happen as we want, but to want them to happen as they do. Seneca advised accepting death as we accept dawn. None of them advocated passive resignation, but active calmness, the kind that allows you to recognize the inevitable and act wisely within what you can transform. Science today validates this practice. Research on resilience shows that accepting circumstances beyond control reduces levels of anxiety and stress. The so-called radical acceptance used in modern therapies helps people to decrease suffering because it cuts off the internal struggle against the immutable. Moreover, studies in neuroscience indicate that emotionally resisting the inevitable activates brain areas associated with pain, while accepting it reduces this activation and allows for better processing of the experience. How to apply this in everyday life? First, identify what you clearly cannot control: the passage of time, the decisions of others, inevitable losses. Instead of wasting energy in denial or resistance, acknowledge that they are there. It's not about liking what happens, but admitting that fighting against the irreversible only aggravates your anxiety. A practical exercise is to mentally repeat a phrase when resistance appears. This is out of my hands, and that's okay. By repeating it, you train your mind to let go of the internal fight. Another useful tip is to observe nature. Notice how a river flows even though it encounters rocks in its path, or how a tree bends with the wind to avoid breaking. These examples serve as reminders that adapting is wiser than resisting the inevitable. You can also practice acceptance in everyday situations. If you get stuck in traffic, instead of feeding frustration, use that time to listen to an audiobook or practice mindful breathing. If a plan gets cancelled at the last minute, see it as an opportunity to rest or attend to another pending task. Accepting the inevitable with calmness doesn't mean giving up. It means choosing where you put your strength. Anxiety grows when you spend your energy fighting with the immutable. Serenity appears when you recognize that there are doors that will never open, but there are always alternative paths if you choose to look for them. 7. Do less, but with excellence. Anxiety is like having too many tabs open in your mind, like when your computer's browser slows down because it's trying to process too many tasks at once. Each pending task, each commitment, and each worry takes up space in your internal memory. In the end, you don't manage to progress in anything, but you feel the weight of everything crushing you. Stoicism proposes the opposite. Reduce, focus, and do less, but with excellence. Marcus Aurelius wrote it in his Meditations, reminding himself that he should not scatter himself in 1,000 matters, but attend to what was in front of him with total attention. For the Stoics, multiplying activities was not a sign of productivity, but of weakness, because a divided mind loses clarity. Excellence is not in doing a lot, but in doing the essential with full presence. Modern science backs up this principle. Studies on multitasking show that trying to do several things at once increases the feeling of stress and reduces efficiency. Research in organizational psychology confirms that those who prioritize a few important tasks and execute them with deep concentration experience less anxiety and greater satisfaction. This is because the brain releases dopamine when completing meaningful tasks, but gets frustrated when it accumulates pending tasks without closure. How to apply this practice in your life? Start each day by identifying what is truly important. Don't make endless to-do lists. Choose 3 key tasks and commit to performing them with total focus. By reducing the list, your mind is freed from the burden of the unattainable and finds real motivation to move forward. Another useful tip is to eliminate conscious distractions. Turn off notifications when you're working on something essential. Dedicate blocks of uninterrupted time and rest between tasks. Anxiety often arises not from the task itself, but from the constant interruptions that break your concentration and increase the feeling of chaos. It is also valuable to apply the rule of excellence in everyday life. If you decide to talk to someone, focus only on listening, not on checking your phone at the same time. If you train, put your energy into feeling the exercise instead of thinking about what you will do next. This mindfulness reduces anxiety because it teaches your brain to live in the present action and not in dispersion. Do less, but do it well. This is the lesson that spans centuries. Anxiety multiplies when you try to encompass everything, but it decreases when you choose wisely. You don't need to be someone who does everything, but someone who chooses the essential and executes it with discipline. In the end, your value is not measured by the number of tasks accumulated, but by the quality with which you lived each one. 8. Master your inner dialogue. Anxiety is like a radio turned up full blast in your head, one that you can't turn off and that repeats the same worn-out song of doubts, fears, and assumptions. That inner voice can be your worst enemy when you let it run unchecked, but it can also become your most powerful ally if you learn to direct it. What you tell yourself in moments of tension can either calm you down or sink you, and that choice is in your hands. Epictetus firmly pointed out, "It's not the facts that disturb us, but what we think about them." That phrase lays bare the root of the problem. Anxiety doesn't arise solely from what happens, but from the internal discourse we build around it. Marcus Aurelius reminded himself to review each thought and eliminate those that were not useful to reason. Seneca advised not to exaggerate pain by anticipating evils that might never come. They all understood that mastering the inner voice is key to maintaining calm. Today, modern psychology fully agrees. Cognitive behavioral therapy, one of the most effective treatments against anxiety, focuses on identifying and questioning automatic thoughts. Neuroscience research shows that the brain reacts with the same intensity to a repeated negative thought as it does to a real threat. However, by reformulating that thought, the anxiety response decreases. How to apply this to your life? First, detect the narrative that your mind repeats when anxiety appears. Ask yourself if what you're telling yourself is a verifiable fact or just an interpretation. For example, instead of thinking, "I'm sure I'm going to fail," recognize that this is not a fact, but a fear. By putting it into clear words, you reduce its power. Then, practice restructuring. Change "I can't handle this" to "I've overcome difficult situations before and I can handle this one too." It's not about repeating empty positive phrases, but reminding yourself with real evidence that you already have strength. Keep a record of moments when you faced something that seemed impossible and you succeeded. Use it as fuel when your inner dialogue tries to bring you down. Another practical tip is to talk to yourself as you would a friend. If a close one confessed their fears to you, would you sink them with more criticism, or would you encourage them with firm but understanding words? Do the same with yourself. Changing the tone with which you talk to yourself has a profound impact on how your body processes anxiety. Mastering the inner dialogue doesn't mean eliminating all negative thoughts, but learning to question them and give them the place they deserve. Anxiety will continue trying to turn up the volume of that internal radio, but now you will have control of the knob. The difference between living trapped in the noise or finding calm lies in how you choose to talk to yourself. 9. Remember your past strength. Anxiety is like a shadow that exaggerates its size on the wall. It seems immense, but when you turn on the light, you discover that it was much smaller than you imagined. That light is your memory of what you have already overcome. Remembering the strength you had in past moments is the clearest proof that you can face what today seems unbearable. Anxiety tries to convince you that you won't be able to, but your personal history proves otherwise. Marcus Aurelius wrote in his Meditations that he should remember how he had previously resisted pain, loss, and betrayal, because that memory was fuel for the present. Epictetus taught that there is no adversity that does not contain within itself the opportunity to demonstrate what has been learned. For the Stoics, looking back was not an act of nostalgia, but of evidence. If you endured before, you can endure now. Science strongly supports this. Research in psychology on resilience shows that evoking memories of past achievements strengthens self-confidence and reduces the perception of threat. Studies in neuroscience confirm that when you bring to mind difficult situations that you overcame, your brain activates reward circuits that reduce the anxiety response. It's like reminding your nervous system that this is not the first time it has faced a challenge. How to apply this practice in your daily life? Take time to write a list of moments when you overcame obstacles. It can be something big, like overcoming an illness, or something seemingly small, like speaking in public when you were afraid. Each memory is a testament to your strength. Have that list handy and read it when anxiety tries to convince you of your weakness. Another practical tip is to visualize your past self facing those situations. Relive how you felt, what you did to get ahead, and what you learned. This mental recreation not only strengthens your confidence, it also prepares your mind to apply similar strategies in the present. You can also create a personal ritual. Each time you face anxiety, place your hand on your chest and repeat softly, "I've done it before. I can do it again." This physical action anchors the memory in your body and reinforces the message. With repetition, your mind assimilates it as an immediate truth. Remembering your past strength does not mean getting stuck in yesterday. It means using it as a reminder of your real capacity. Anxiety always exaggerates the danger and minimizes your resources, but your history is proof that you have what it takes. Each battle won is a light that reduces the current shadow. The key is not to forget that your present stands on all the times you were stronger than you thought. 10. Practice daily gratitude. Anxiety is like a spotlight that only illuminates what is missing, what could go wrong, or what you have not yet achieved. Meanwhile, everything you already have remains in the shadows, invisible. This selective gaze feeds the feeling of emptiness and lack. Gratitude is about shifting the focus, moving the light towards what already exists in your life, what supports you, and what you have achieved. It does not eliminate problems, but it changes the way your mind confronts them. Seneca said that nothing is more honorable than a grateful heart. For the Stoics, giving thanks was not a superficial gesture. It was a mental training that recalled abundance, even in the midst of adversity. Marcus Aurelius would remind himself upon waking that he should be grateful for the simple fact of opening his eyes to a new day. Epictetus, despite having been a slave, taught that there is always something to value: the air, life, the ability to reason. For them, gratitude was a strategy against anxiety because it restored perspective. Science strongly confirms this. Studies in positive psychology show that those who practice gratitude consistently experience fewer symptoms of anxiety and depression. Neuroscience research reveals that writing down what you value each day activates brain regions associated with calm and satisfaction, reducing the activity of areas linked to fear. Gratitude trains the brain to focus on what you do have under control. How can you bring this into your everyday life? Start with a simple exercise. Every night, write down 3 things you are grateful for. They don't have to be huge achievements. It can be a sincere conversation, a moment of calm, even a mistake you learned from. This habit changes the way your mind processes the day and weakens the natural tendency to remember only the negative. Another tip is to practice gratitude in real time. When you eat, mentally thank for the food. When you talk to someone you value, take a moment to recognize the importance of their presence. When you face a difficulty, look for at least one aspect that leaves you learning. This training does not deny the difficult, but it prevents the negative from occupying all the space. It is also useful to share gratitude. Expressing to someone else what you appreciate about them strengthens relationships and generates a circle of well-being. By verbalizing it, you reinforce this positive perception in yourself. Practicing daily gratitude is not about closing your eyes to anxiety, it is about opening them to a more complete vision. It is to remember that life is not only made up of lacks, but also of abundances that often go unnoticed. When you give thanks, you train your mind to recognize what supports your path, and that certainty reduces the inner storm, because it reminds you that you already have more than you thought. Thank you for staying until the end of the video. If you watched the whole thing, comment "I am Stoic" as our secret signal to know that you're a true student of Stoicism. Don't forget to subscribe and give the video a like if you enjoyed it. See you in the next video, and remember, keep cultivating your Stoic mind.